Hey guys, what's up? Zishin here, and this is the Lenovo Z2 Plus, also known as the Zuk Z2. I've been using this phone for about 2 weeks now, and this is going to be everything you need to know. This phone comes with the best processor, lots of RAM, and lots of storage. Pretty much standard things you would expect from a high-end smartphone like the Galaxy S7, the HTC 10, and the Moto Z. Except, instead of costing $700, this costs just $250. I mean, that's just insane value because even the OnePlus 3 costs $400. So all Lenovo has to do is to create good software, and this phone is going to be a must-buy, right? Well, not so fast, because creating good software is a lot harder than you think. So this is going to be my full review of the Lenovo Z2 Plus, also known as the Zuk Z2. I love this phone a lot. I mean, I absolutely do, but I really hate Lenovo for putting glass on the front and the back of the smartphone, because now this phone is incredibly fragile and I have to be super careful when I'm using it, otherwise I can crack it super easily. When you put this on a flat surface, it slides out really easily, and when you hold it in your hand, it also slides out really easily as well, which really sucks. The glass also picks up oil and smudges really easily, so you can forget about keeping the phone clean here. Okay, so now that we've gotten the worst part of the phone out of the way, let's get to the rest of the phone. The design is really square with straight edges, and it kind of looks like the iPhone 5, which really doesn't do much to make this phone look modern. That being said, this phone does feel decent because of the glass on the front and the back, so it doesn't feel cheap if that's what you're thinking. On the bottom of the phone, there's the extremely useful home button on the bottom of the phone, and on the right side you have the buttons and the SIM tray as well, and sadly the SIM tray does not have a microSD card slot. On the back it's pretty clean, you just have the camera and the Zuk logo and pretty much nothing else. So overall build quality of this phone, it's not bad. The glass on the front and the back does make this phone feel a little more premium than plastic devices, but it also makes this phone feel incredibly fragile, which I really don't like. We find here a 5-inch IPS Full HD display, which actually looks really good. However, when you compare it to like an AMOLED display, it doesn't look as good, but in its own right, it's actually a pretty good display. The screen gets pretty bright at 500 nits, which makes it really easy to see in direct sunlight, but the screen is a little bit reflective, so you do have to watch out for that when you're outside. The front and the back of the phone are both made of Gorilla Glass 3, so you don't have to worry about scratching the phone, but we do have to worry about it shattering if you drop it on the ground, so I do recommend getting a case for this phone. There is one set of speaker holes on the bottom of the device, and it's actually not bad. Compared to Chinese devices, it's actually a pretty good speaker, but compared to the best like the HTC 10 and the Galaxy S7, it's not that good. Volume-wise, it actually gets pretty loud. Quality-wise, it's okay. You get some pretty good mids and highs, and you get a little bit of bass, but other than that, it's nothing to write home about. Here's some sample audio for you to listen to. So as most of you guys know, battery life for me is make or break. And as an insanely heavy power user, this phone makes it, but just barely. It's able to take me through a super intense 16-hour day with 6 hours of screen on time, and at the end of the day I had about 14% left, which is actually really good. However, compare that to Redmi devices which traditionally have had great battery life, I could do the exact same thing and get around 25 to 30% at the end of the day. So that's a lot less battery cushion on this phone compared to the Redmi devices. I was mostly browsing the web, going on Reddit, reading some news. Nothing too intense, no gaming or anything like that. I did take a few pictures as well. I also do the 2 battery tests that I do for every review. I did the web browsing test and the video playback test. And for the web browsing test, it died after 9.5 hours. And for the video playback test, it died after 10 hours and 35 minutes. So those are pretty good results, but not absolutely insane. If you are a light, medium, or heavy user, this phone is able to get you throughout one day, no problem at all. There's also Quickcharge 3.0 that you can use with the USB-C port at the bottom, and I was able to charge my phone up to about 70% in about an hour. So when I got the phone, it didn't actually come with the stock ROM, but it came with a custom ROM which was default English and it had Google Play Launcher installed. However, it didn't have OTA updates or the permissions manager working, which was really annoying. I had to manually flash the stock ROM, so if you're not comfortable doing that, then this might not be the phone for you, or you can find it somewhere else where they do not install custom ROMs and just leave the stock ROM on the device. The stock ROM came with Android 6.0 Marshmallow as well as ZUI 2.0 pre-installed. ZUI is a custom skin kind of like MIUI. It also looks kind of cartoony, but it's actually way less obtrusive than MIUI itself. So the first thing I did was get rid of the stock launcher and install Google Now Launcher, and now my phone actually looks a lot better. That being said, ZUI does come with quite a bit of functions and customizations pre-installed. It's a lot less than MIUI, but it is a lot more than usual stock ROMs from other manufacturers. The most useful function in this phone is the multi-function home button on the front of the phone, which has the integrated fingerprint sensor. The fingerprint sensor itself is fast and it is accurate, and you won't have any problem at all, and it also works when your hands are wet or oily as well. This home button is extremely innovative. You can use it to switch between apps by swiping left and right, and you can also customize the button itself to have different functions. For example, my personal favorite is touching the button and the screen turning off. My absolute favorites. I never use buttons at all on the phone anymore. So this phone has the latest Snapdragon 820 processor as well as 4 gigs of RAM. This phone is able to cut through pretty much anything in the Play Store. You can multitask with ease, you can play any game you want. This phone cannot slow down. I also ran the Antutu benchmark and I got a score of around 121,000. So one of the selling points that Lenovo was trying to push across in their promotional material is that this phone is going to work with pretty much any major 4G carrier worldwide, and they aren't lying. If you live in a major city in the US or Canada, you most likely will be able to get 4G, but I still do recommend you check with your carrier to make sure that this phone works on your carrier. I was able to get some pretty decent speeds on speed test as well. They weren't insanely fast, but they're definitely fast enough. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and GPS all worked very well as well. I had no complaints about that. However, I want to mention Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi range on this phone is a lot farther than any of the metal phones I've tested, which is a fair assumption to make as well. So the camera. One of probably the biggest sticking point for anyone trying to move from a flagship to a Chinese phone. And I have to say that the Lenovo Z2 Plus has one of the best cameras on a Chinese phone I've ever tested. However, compared to the best in the market, for example the Galaxy S7, the iPhone 7, and now the upcoming Google Pixel, this camera cannot match up to those. That being said, it's very easy to take good pictures with great color and great detail with the rear camera, and the front camera is actually pretty decent for selfies as well. One of the major selling points of this camera is the ability to shoot in 4K, and I was able to shoot in 4K, and the 4K footage is actually pretty crispy. The footage you see here is going to be downsampled to 1080p, just because I don't want to render the entire video in 4K, but I will have a link up above to a 4K sample from the Lenovo Z2 Plus. The 4K footage is pretty good, but it does lack the detail and the clarity that you get from the S7 and the iPhone 7's 4K footage. You can shoot slow motion video as well, but you're limited to 720p at 120 frames per second. You can also shoot 1080p video with the front camera, but obviously the front camera's footage is not as crispy or as good as the rear camera. So the biggest knock I have on the camera is the lack of OIS, or optical image stabilization. This is something that is needed as megapixel counts get higher and higher. You definitely need a steady hand to be able to take good pictures. It's not a problem for me because I'm able to keep my hands pretty steady, but if you are not able to do that, then that might be a deal breaker for you. So what is my verdict on this device? Well, before I figured out that there were so many software issues with this device, I was ready to recommend this device to anybody. However, now that I know that there are software issues on this device that are pretty hard to fix for the average person, I can only recommend this to someone who is a techie. So if you're comfortable with replacing ROMs on your cell phone, then that won't be much of a stumbling block for you. Or the other solution is just to find a Lenovo Z2 Plus that has the stock ROM pre-installed when you purchase it. So with all that out of the way, this is going to be my daily driver for the foreseeable future, as it has pretty much almost everything I'm looking for in a smartphone: a 5-inch display, a large battery, and the fastest internals on the planet. Well, except for the Snapdragon 821, but the 820 is pretty close. So I want to know what you think about the Lenovo Z2 Plus, aka the Zuk Z2. Let me know down in the comments below, and if you like this video, hit like, and I would appreciate a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.